Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today I am excited to welcome Cat's Eye Distillery, or their well-known brand Obtainium, the high-proof, high-octane whiskeys that hit the market last year, a few years back, and have really took the market by storm. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's trying to get one. So we're excited to have the founders of this brand here with us, Eugene Nassif and John Baker, to tell us all about Cat's Eye and they're kind of the family of brands that are under that portfolio. A lot of familiar faces here, so everybody knows the drill. Get nerdy, ask questions. That's why we're here. Just play with the mute button as you will. It seems like a lot of regulars. Nobody's new, so they know. Everybody knows the drill. John, Eugene, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome. Thank you for joining us virtually. We have 5 expressions in front of us. We have the Nassif family rum, Nassif family American whiskey. Then we have a light whiskey that's 15 years old, a light whiskey that's 6 years old, and then a Canadian whiskey that's 27, and it's only at 71.5%. What are we looking at? 70.5% only. That's pretty insane. 27-year-old whiskey at what is it? What's the word for this? Hazmat proof. Yeah. A friend of mine gave me a sample of a store pick from San Diego. That's a 26-year-old Canadian at 77%, which I'm just going to use to fill up my lighter. So I should be good there.
It'll be cheaper than gas in California before you know it.
For sure. Yeah. So we're super excited. We're here to kind of learn all about everything you guys are doing.
Awesome. John, do you want to start out with Cat's Eye Distillery and the history there, and then I'll jump in when Obtainium started?
Sure. Yeah, Cat's Eye Distillery started in 2016. I was originally part of another distillery called Honey Creek Distillery, which was a small distillery in southern Iowa with my brother-in-law. And that's where we learned everything, took classes, and we just made the white lightning in the mason jar back then, and didn't go over very well. We shut it down. I brought all the equipment back home to Bettendorf, where I live here, and started up Cat's Eye Distillery, and started out making 2 products: our Essence of Iowa whiskey, which is a nice, smooth, doesn't have the bite that some whiskeys might have, and then a Krupnik, which is a honey liqueur product. And as it was growing, I found out about a website, Facebook page called Iowa Whiskey Chasers. So I subscribed to that, and that's where I met Gene. He was an admin for that page. One day back, I think it was November 2018, I saw them posting back and forth about how, Gene said, I wish we could go out and just buy a barrel, a good barrel, and bottle it, without any of the expense to go with it, and just sell it to our members, dirt cheap. But that's illegal. And I stepped in and I said, well, Gene, maybe I can help you out there. I have a permit to do that. And the rest is history. Gene said, PM me, and we started talking, and that's when we first came out with the light whiskey, and you can take over from there, Gene.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think, looking behind John right now, you see all those barrels, and when was it? May of 2019. So 3 short years ago, we had 1.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see how far things have gone, but yeah, we started looking for barrels. I reached out to brokers. I reached out to, at that point in time, MGP had a similar event to what's going on now. Nothing was available. So I'm calling around, end up going to one broker who had, actually it was Dickel barrels available at the time, some like mid 5-year bourbon rye, and then they had light whiskey, and light whiskey was like overlooked, like completely overlooked. I started reading up on light whiskey first because I wanted to know the history about it. Love the concept of it. It's distilled higher than bourbon or rye. No mash bill required, i.e., rye, you have to have 51% rye grain, corn is 80%, etc. There is no limit. You can do it with any grain. distilled over 160 proof, below 190, aged in used oak. Now, to most people and to a lot of people, they immediately think Canadians. And yes, it is very similar to the Canadian whiskeys, but what it's also very similar to, and I am now beginning to explore that category, is single grain Scotch. You can compare light whiskey almost identically to single grain Scotch. And that means two things. One, we can start to bottle it and, do the independent bottlings that way, which we began doing. And then later down the road, you start blending with it. Now, whereas in Scotland, you're doing the light whiskey or the grain whiskey base with malts, I brought the concept here and did light whiskey base with bourbon and rye to bring different flavor profiles to whiskeys that you would otherwise never find with a single style of whiskey, i.e. there will never be a bourbon that will taste like Nassif Family Reserve. There'll never be a rye that tastes like Nassif Family Reserve because it's a blend of straights. Had been done a couple of times in the past, not with light whiskey base, but with corn whiskey base, back 30s, 40s, early whiskey boom, so post-prohibition whiskey boom. So that's kind of where things started. Obtainium was the American independent bottler of spirits. We start with light whiskey. We do a Polish rye distilled in Poland, which was super cool. We do Canadian corn whiskey from Jim Beam, even before all the other people did it. We did MGP bourbon and rye, single barrel proof, which everybody liked, but I didn't want to be one of a dozen on the shelf. 13-year light whiskey, we're growing. 14-year, 15-year starts to dry up. This is like late 2021. I reach out to MGP. I stupidly, we couldn't have done it because we didn't have the ability to at the time, but purchased the entirety of all of the 10 plus year light whiskey that was available. We weren't able to do that, but then I started looking into the younger light whiskey. It turns out the 5 to 7 year light whiskey that we ended up purchasing that you're looking at behind you was really great quality stuff. Really enjoyed it. And then the key there, yes, when the 10 plus year light whiskey comes back available, I know that there are thousands of barrels still out there. It's just they're not available for sale. We'll absolutely be purchasing those. But for now, I really like the price point of this light whiskey. We can do a barrel proof, high proof single barrel bottling at $40, $45 retail for the 7 year light whiskey. And we just released now a 100 proof light whiskey, and the estimated retail price is $29.99. It's bottled in bond, single barrel light whiskey. So same stuff as the stuff we'll try tonight. It's just bottled in bond, so 100 proof. Otherwise, we've bottled a ton of different stuff. The rum was super cool. I reach out to a rum broker down in Texas who imports rum. He also teaches at Rum University, which is part of Moonshine U. That is a blend of 6 to 10 year Jamaican and Barbados rums, aged in port casks, whiskey casks, and the new oak. The Nassif Family Reserve, like I was talking about, is a light whiskey bourbon and rye blend. I started getting into Canadians. A cool story there that we'll get to is that Black Velvet, the whiskey that I'm sure all of you guys have heard of, was purchased by Heaven Hill. And so a lot of the old whiskey stock Heaven Hill had no desire for. So what I ended up doing is started to purchase all the old whiskey stock, similar to a lot of these great stories, Stitzel, National Distillers, etc. Even Pennsylvania, the old like Michter's, and some of the old Overholt ryes back in the day, the old Maryland and Pennsylvania. So it's cool that we did that. And that kind of brings us to where we are today.
So we have a nice lineup in front of us. We have 5 very different expressions. Should we start drinking, and what order do you want to go in?
Oh, start drinking, absolutely. I'm open to orders. I would say low proof to high proof, just because you don't want to blow out your palate.
Oh yeah, you don't want to start with 69.7 just as a warm up, right? So should we start with the Nassif Family Reserve and then finish with the Nassif Family Reserve rum? Should we like do that circle, or do you want to?
Or we can do the two Nassifs and then light whiskeys and then the Canadian, the highest proof last.
Sure, that sounds good. Let's do that. So you want to start with the rum, or you want to start with the whiskey?
Let's start with the whiskey, I think.
Whiskey.
Okay, we'll do the whiskey and the rum. Perfect. Cool. So the Nassif family is light. It's a blend of light
Light
American
whiskey,
and
bourbon, and rye.
okay. And when I was trying to find expressions, you don't have a lot of bourbons that or there's none in the market right now. Is it just kind of
Not really.
harder to find?
We did previously. No, it's not even that it's hard to find. Everybody and their mother and father have done a MGP bourbon. And I really did not have the desire. Oh, 1 second. Cat's yelling at me. There we go. Anyway, I never had the desire to be one of many. In a market that's becoming more and more competitive as more and more craft producers hit the market, there was simply no way for us or no desire for us to play that game. I wanted to create something unique, and unique is this concept of taking essentially these Scotch blending techniques and applying it to American whiskeys. So that brings us to where we're at with Nassif Family Reserve.
And who does the blending for you?
I came up with Nassif Family Reserve whiskey, well, somewhat intoxicated, but but John and I do play around with the blend. It always is and will be the MGP bourbon rye light whiskey blend.
So it's all MGP. So the
Correct.
Nassif Family Reserve is all MGP.
Yep.
Okay.
But depending on the blend, depending on everything, it's what 3 to 6 barrel batch. So things do vary in terms of age, flavor profile, etc. Just because it is such a small batch.
Are you trying to keep consistency, or are you just trying to put out a delicious batch every time?
No desire for consistency, which is another thing that people hate to hear. But there are definitely variations. We embrace difference. And what's cool about it is, I'm not saying that every batch is radically different, but I do want enough variation that people can see and taste different expressions as being different, slightly different profiles.
I can't tell you with the older light whiskeys we put in there. When we get the light whiskey, we don't always get a full barrel.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a half barrel, 22 inches, 15 inches. And when they're low like that, sometimes we'll mix 2 barrels in there instead of 1. And so you get variation mostly on the light whiskey side of things.
Yep. And we started blending in some of the younger light whiskey too. And the kicker is, and you guys are in California, the oldest light whiskey that we ever blended into a Nassif Family Reserve batch was a Bevmo blend that we did way back when, maybe 6 months ago. And we used 16-year light whiskey in it. And one would think like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing ever. Like I'm so amazed. And the reception was actually not as good as the first batch we did with mostly 7-year light whiskey. And so it's been an interesting learning experience, not only for us, but also for the consumer to see like age statement. Well, it's very important. And we try to keep our blend between like 4 and 10 years old, let's call it. Well, that's absolutely important. I'm noticing that the different blend variations, specifically with the younger light whiskey, is balancing out very well. I think that we're quickly honing in on like our perfect blend, but we're still playing around, especially with rye whiskey. Like 4-year to 6-year rye whiskey changes significantly in profile.
Is there a flavor profile that you're going for, or something that you're trying to achieve in blending it to promote it as a light whiskey? Or, I mean, because a lot of us probably, I mean, I've had some of your expressions before, but I wouldn't I know what to look for when I'm drinking a bourbon. I know what to look for when drinking a single malt. I don't know what to look for when drinking a light whiskey. So is there something you're going for with the blend, or is it just trying to make it as good as possible with the two, or what's the goal as you're doing it?
So the American whiskey is not light. It's a light whiskey, bourbon, and rye. So it's a 3 separate whiskey blend. But yes, the idea for blending, especially using a light whiskey base, is that the light whiskey is the finish of the whiskey, and you'll taste that. So the vanilla toffee, the lingering finish, that's a light whiskey in there. Same thing that single grain does to Scotch blends. And then the rye is for the spice component, and then the bourbon's the sweeter notes, the fruit notes.
So the mash bill is all 3. So are there percentages, or it's just whatever you feel like it needs more of? And that's a.
Most of the time, it's a third, approximately.
And you said there's no age. The age is anywhere from 4 to 10 years for this. You said
Now it's around 4 to like 7-ish. It's been as great as 4 to 16. Yeah.
It's interesting. I know with single grain Scotch, I think like with light whiskey, they say that it's not great until it gets to be really old, like the 27 or, the late 20s. So you found that it's got that lull in the middle, but it's great when at young and great at old, or?
Well, and the big factor difference between here and Scotland is climate.
Of course.
So the difference between American aging and Scotch aging is just the variance in temperature. So you are going to see more influence from the casks sooner here in America. So yeah, what you would consider a great single grain in the 10 to 15 year, you can really achieve earlier. And additionally, the light whiskey specifically from MGP has a barrel entry proof a bit lower, and then stored in the warehouses that aren't climate controlled. So slight variations there, and it is indicative of a little bit more wood profile quicker.
After you blend, do you let them rest in any sort of container? Is it just metal or plastic, or do you put it back in wood?
Yeah, we've got IBC totes, so standard practice for liquor storage. And that's where they're proofed down. John, do we use steel too? We've got a big tank too.
Yeah, we leave it sit in the mixer tank. We bring it down to 107 proof very slowly. That takes close to 4 to 5 days to get that done. In fact, we're working on a batch right now over there.
This is quite spicy. Interesting. It's got a sweetness, but it's got a lot of spice on the finish.
That's a rye.
So it's got to be an older rye to give that spice, right? Younger rye, sweet.
Yeah, so I believe the batch that you tried had the 6-year rye in it. That was when we experimented with the older aged rye.
Is that batch 16, I think?
Yep.
If you have the bottle.
funny. This is, I won't say low proof, but compared to your other stuff, low proof, but it tastes hotter to me than, I mean, I have Obtainiums that are like super crazy high proof that, but this I added a little water to try to pull some of the flavors out. So, which I never do. So.
Any other questions with the Nassif whiskey? There's another one.
So are you staying consistent with no plans to distill, or are you and John working on selling Cat's Eye Distillery whiskey as well?
John already does. So that Essence of Iowa, and John can talk more about it. That's an all Iowa bourbon.
Yeah, it's 100% corn. What I do is I take the very center cuts of the hearts of the run. It'll take me, I have a small still, it's only 4-inch column. It'll take me 7 to 12 runs just to fill up 130-gallon barrel. But it's the very premium cut of the hearts of the run. And I recycle the rest through to get more of it. But and that way it doesn't have the bite that other whiskeys might have. Nice and smooth, and I sell it at 80 proof.
But then getting back to, do we have the desire to just do the just distill ourselves? Absolutely not. The end goal for Obtainium is to be an American independent bottler. So think of us as your Gordon McPhill, your Alexander Murray, etc. Cadenhead, another great example. The goal for me right now, and we're starting to transition to that point, is to start to purchase select lots from all over the country, all over the world as well. I bought my first barrel of scotch the other day. Personal investment, not the distillery investment, just because I have to figure out the laws, and I would rather have my ass get chewed out than the company. And that just has to do with importation, licensing. I'm using a Scotch distiller license. Somebody else is actually on the barrel, but that's a long story. We'll get into that later, the whole Scotch process. But the point is, my ideal scenario for Obtainium down the road is to be able to go into a warehouse akin to, let's say, the Willets of old, and instead of just having your bourbons and your ryes from, they did MGP rye, but then they did Heaven Hill, Stitzelweller, early times at that point, having 4 or 5 Kentucky or Indiana distilleries in this warehouse. I want to have a warehouse full of whiskeys from around the world. I don't want to just have bourbon and rye. I want to have Canadian whiskeys. I want to have bourbons. I want to have ryes. I want to have scotches, and they have to be blended malts because of the laws and all that bullshit. But the point is, a warehouse full of spirits from around the world, rums too. Got into rums, Armagnacs, so that people can have an experience from around the world in one place. And then for the people that want to purchase a single barrel, they can get the barrel there. But again, we're the curators of these casks from around the world.
Plus, we're finishing them in different types of barrels, like port wine barrels and stout beer barrels from microbreweries from around the area.
I think the biggest difference is you're not trying to put the distillery name on there.
Where they were sourced, distilled.
Yeah.
Only thing stopping us from doing that is litigation. People have threatened to sue us multiple times for that. Unfortunately, that's how the American whiskey world works. The only one that we really got permission for was our Canadian. We were able to market that as distilled at the Palliser Distillery. Heaven Hill is notoriously litigious. In fact, they have sent cease and desist letters, not to us, but to friends of mine in the industry, for even referencing that their barrels came from Heaven Hill. So the difference is not that we don't, we would love to put the distillery name. Jim Beam, we put distilled in Claremont or something along those lines, a dead giveaway. They weren't able to sue us for that because they don't trademark the name of the city. But the point is, the American whiskey world is not receptive to the idea of disclosing anything. It's horrible, it's sad, but that's the harsh reality. Would we?
We do put MGP on the light whiskey.
Yeah, MGP doesn't give a shit. We put it on everything. They're open to it, so that's on everything. But otherwise, most people don't like that at all.
Gotcha.
Well, we're ready to switch to the rum.
Yeah. I should also note too, I'm a lawyer by day, but I mostly do divorce law, and I know just enough trademark to get myself in a lot of trouble, or to cover our asses when we do get in trouble.
I hope you're not drinking this stuff while you're doing your divorce law stuff, though.
You would be shocked. I had a big old glass of whiskey. I settled a big divorce case, man,
Wow.
2 days ago now.
After you've settled it, I'm talking about while meeting with the client.
Well,
Or do you use that to help mediate them?
no, but there was a time that one of my clients, I don't hide that I do liquor, but like it's not something that I tell my clients. And one of my clients like came in one day. He was like, I had a glass of your whiskey last night. I'm like, oh shit. And this guy's like 20 years my senior, 25 years my senior. So that was obviously a fun conversation to have. Dive into the rum.
Yep.
All right. This rum, while not being a huge seller, and I think the reason why is because the rum is not taken off yet, the high-end rum. But of all of the spirits that we've done in terms of quality per dollar, I think this is easily one of the highest.
It's a blend of Jamaican rum, which is finished in port wine barrels, and a blend of Barbados rum, which is finished in oak barrels, correct, Gene?
New oak and whiskey, and then port barrels. Yep.
Yep.
I believe it's, what is it? Worthy Park and Foursquare.
Yep. To me, it tastes like birthday cake.
What do you guys think?
I think it's one of the most interesting rums I've ever had. It isn't just sweet syrup rum. It's got some beautiful spice. High proof. I actually found that if I put some water, it just really turned into like almost like a caramel thing. Really enjoyable.
What I like about it too is the port comes out on the back end. It's like toffee and sweet kind of molasses, and then the back end you get the port.
Okay, I'll say I've never liked a single rum we've done or been a giant fan of it. I seriously could drink this and not even worry about it. It tastes like liquid birthday cake, and I'm just like blown
Yep.
away.
We get the
Just-
birthday cake often. Like it is
Yep.
shocking.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah, I'm
that
not a big fan of
vanilla
rum in general
buttercream
either, but this
kinda
one's really
cake.
good.
Oh my gosh, just
So good.
so phenomenal. Like this is the one time I'm gonna buy a bottle of rum from a brand we've done this with, because I have to have this.
Where's it available?
You guys are California, so I believe Bevmo has some, and then you might have to hunt around for some of the local shops. You can absolutely ask. Any shop that carries my stuff right now can order it.
I think Jeff has it at OC Bottle Shop.
Yeah, I'm sure that they do.
I know Village Liquor has some of the Nassif, so they might have this one too.
I was with some California guys, attorneys, 2 weeks ago in Kentucky, and they ended up buying a bunch of my stuff once they went back at the OC Bottle Shop. So I do know that they carry, I think, every expression. And also, if you guys have heard of Simon Law Group, those guys are friends of mine.
I'm sorry I had to miss that trip. It sounded and looked like it was awesome.
Did you see online?
Yeah.
The most surreal moment, and I called John when it happened, and I think I messaged John. So it didn't happen once, but twice. And it was a humbling thing first We were at the hotel. I was stopped by Jason of Mash and Drum, just random, like not planned at all. Just happened to be staying at the same hotel. Hey, Gene, how are you? And like, I had never met him. And it was so great to see him. Love the guy to death. We've done barrel picks together. So that was the first time. And oh, we need to take a photo together, etc. That was great. Then I'm at Bardstown Bourbon Company of all places. Not very intoxicated, but like I'm getting there. And I just like hear my name called out while we're there. And I look over and it's one of the guys who I've done like 3 barrel picks for in Wisconsin. He's at Bardstown Bourbon Company doing a tour. They weren't doing a pick, or they were talking about doing a pick. I don't know if Bardstown is doing those yet, but the punchline is like, he was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I saw you here too. I need to take a photo of this, and this. And I go, didn't happen once, it happened twice. And this was something that has never happened before.
I hope you acted like there was an everyday thing for you.
No, not at all. I was like, holy shit, I'm a loser.
Reading the comments at the bottom of the screen. Lots of good comments on the rum coming by there.
Yep.
Definitely all the frosting on the nose.
I will say I'm a fan of the Foursquare, and I poured a little glass of Detente just kind of as a comparison. The nose is much bigger on the Foursquare, but the palate is just, this is delicious. The Nassif is delicious. It's kind of, I'm surprised. It may be some Foursquare in your blend, but I'm surprised head to head that the Nassif rum is killing this stuff from Barbados.
Yeah. And Foursquare, I mean, they were the inspiration, truly. I did not appreciate rum until I tried. I've got Dorothy's too somewhere. Let me grab that in a second. But Dorothy's is like the budget Foursquare. Started drinking that and I was like, man, rums can be really good. And that's what got me into rums in the first place. And then the other thing that got me into rum is that I nerd out over weird stuff. Tiki, like you guys over in California, love tiki. I love the whole like tiki culture and everything. Absolutely love it.
Somebody in the comments was mentioning the rum should be wax dipped and put sprinkles on it. I was trying to find the bottle. We've done that.
Yeah, we did brain candy.
Yeah. I can't find one right now though.
Yeah, not a big deal.
We've done it.
Yep, we have done it.
We've done a lot of weird things for barrel picks.
Yeah, there have been a few questionable things we've done happily.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we go into the light now?
No, don't go into the light. Turn back.
Stay in the rum, huh?
Now let's definitely light whiskey. We're starting with the 6 year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. At a measly 64.6.
So the cool thing about these barrels is that they were all Jack Daniel's aged. So MGP bought barrels from Jack Daniel's and filled them with light whiskey.
So if there's no market for light whiskey, why was then MGP making it?
There was no, yes and no. When you say there was no market for light whiskey, no, there was no market for light whiskey itself. There is a market for Canadian whiskey, aka Black Velvet, Seagram 7, etc. Seagram 7 is American. Sorry, I'll get to that in a second. There's a market for Seagram's VO, Canadian Club, all of those. Those are all Canadian distilled, but they are technically light whiskeys. They meet all of the designations for light whiskey. So the reason why it was distilled is because MGP Seagram's also had Seagram's distillery up in Canada, and then it would go into blends for cheaper blended whiskeys. Think of it just like your cheap blended Scotch. They were barreling and aging a bunch of it for blends, and obviously when your supply was greater than how much you were bottling, some of this ended up aging far longer than it would have to go into blends.
Yeah, finding a bottle of or a barrel of light whiskey that's older and just happen to be there, I totally understand. But you were saying that there's thousands of 4-year-old or 10-year-old light whiskey, which means they're making it on purpose. So that was where I was like, why are they making it?
Yeah, mostly for blending.
Makes sense. I don't even like, it's funny. I've gone down the rabbit hole. I think most of us have, where we're searching out a specific varietal at this point, right? We're like, people are looking for the red corn or whatever, or blue corn whiskey. And I often forget that there's still this huge category that is just cheap blends that people just drink whiskey.
Oh yeah, by volume, it's greater than you could ever imagine.
I'm experimenting with some Jimmy Red corn right now. I just got a couple 100 pounds of it last week. I'm going to be grinding that and malting it and distilling it and putting it in a barrel and see how it turns out.
You must have a lot of leftover barrels. Like, do you reuse them? So if you're not,
Not right now.
We collaborate with a lot of other microbreweries in the area. We'll give them a barrel for free, and they'll use it for 14 to 15 months, put a stout in it or whatever, and then we'll get it back and we'll blend something in that. But we do sell them on the market. A lot of people use them for making things, or just whatever reason they buy them.
gotcha. Are you looking forward to any finishing experimentations that you haven't done yet?
Ooh,
We haven't done.
Just
that we
take-
haven't done. Yeah, so I want to do some brandy barrels. Although we've done one, we did an apple brandy barrel, I guess.
That turned out pretty good.
Yeah, that one was good. I want to do more like port barrels, wine barrels, etc.
We had some wine barrels from Plump Jack
Yep,
in Napa.
really good.
Came out real good, yeah.
Yeah, otherwise there's nothing. Ice wine, I would love to do an ice wine barrel. Being in the Midwest, we have the opportunity to get ice wine barrels just because Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota are in the climate that you can actually make ice wine. I'm sure you guys know, maybe don't know what ice wine is. Yes, no.
I don't.
Yeah.
What is it?
Really, John? Oh,
Yeah.
ice wine is where they wait until the grapes, like the first freeze. So the grapes like freeze on the vine, and then they like pick them and like harvest them all in the same night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like ultra sweet wine, so the sugar
it's super
content is
sweet.
higher.
It's the next step beyond Sauterne.
Yeah.
Okay.
Canada is known for it. They do a lot of sweet wines in Canada.
Yeah, especially in the Niagara area.
Yep. So
Good
it makes
stuff.
Moscato taste like it's not even that sweet.
Well, I'll give you one more vote for doing more port finish.
Yeah.
Because the port finish that I've had, some of us have had, was great. So
Yeah, we're always looking for port barrels. We just got a few 20, how old were they, John? 25-year-old?
Yeah, I think 25 or 26.
25 to 26-year-old Wisconsin, of all places, port barrels.
well, Wisconsin's known for their port.
Yeah, who would have known that Wisconsin had 20-plus-year-old port?
Is port a style of cheese there, or how does that work?
It might be.
They do make port cheese, yes.
Sure.
The sweetness on this light whiskey is pretty spectacular. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
The higher proof
Yeah.
pulls a lot more sugar from the barrel, the wood sugars.
I mean, this is more like proper proof, and this is like, to me, the other tasted almost hotter than this, but maybe just because the sweetness of this just brings out all the flavor for me.
Mhm. And there's no rye in this too, no rye grain.
Do you know what the mash bill, I guess, is for this?
Yep, 99 corn, 1 malted barley.
Nice. And the barley is just for the enzymes?
Yep.
Yeah, my understanding for light whiskey was generally it's bourbon and refill casks, but I guess it could be broader than that, right?
If it was just bourbon and refill casks, it would not be light whiskey. Could not be. Light whiskey
Would
needs
just
to
be
be
corn whiskey.
distilled a little higher than that.
Yeah, bourbon has to go into the cask at 125 proof. The light whiskey, I
It's
think
140 typically, but it ranges.
I thought it was closer to 160, but
Distilled to 160.
still, yeah.
Yep. Barrel entry proof of MGP was around 140.
Okay.
Yeah. The Canadians, the barrel entry, I think, was 150.
Wow. Is that why they're coming up? They're coming out hazmat. Most of your hazmat stuff has been Canadian or kind of all over the place.
A lot of the old light whiskey was hazmat. But the Canadians, yeah, absolutely got hazmat quick. A lot of them.
Because of the cold, is the water evaporating faster, or what causes it to be
Yeah,
that high?
between that and then the higher entry proof.
So were you looking specifically to kind of make a stand and be the brand known for the hazmat releases, or because that's kind of turned out to be your niche?
Turned out to
Just
be
sort
that
of
way.
happened. It just sort of happened.
Yeah.
When we received our first barrels that were over 140 proof, they came with a hazmat placard on them. I go, oh, that's interesting. And I did some research, and sure enough, anything over 140 proof is considered hazmat to the shipping industry. So I decided to go ahead and put that on the logo, on the label for anything over 140 proof.
And you would never guess how many people, like, again, I would have never guessed that, like, when I say just the proof, people would be like, oh my God, I need that. And like, I don't know. I guess it's a balance, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Some of these high proof things are high flavor, but also I've never been one to say that there is any correlation between flavor and proof, i.e. there can be something that's low proof, like many of the Armagnacs I've tried that are, even in the low 80 proofs, and they still have full flavor. So there isn't that correlation. I think that that's a problem that people do associate it, i.e. if it's 86 proof, it's watered down or flavorless. What really matters is what it exits the barrel at versus how much water has been added, i.e. if the barrel exit proof is 86, let's say, super low proof, right? But it still has all the flavor from aging because all of that spirit has been in there the entire time. There's no water to water down what's happened over 10, 15 plus years. So I think that's a misconception. That being said, the higher proof is going to pull out a lot more of the sugars. You're going to get the sweeter, punchier flavors. You're also going to get the oak eventually. So there's that too.
Sorry if I missed this. I stepped away right when we were transitioning. The Obtainium, are they all single barrels? Are they small batch?
All but 2 releases, I think, of the Obtainium. So like the light whiskey and all that are single barrels. A few of them are small batch because we bought them in totes, just because it's easier for transport, easier for import from either Canada or Barbados, Jamaica up to us.
But those aren't Obtainium though. Those are Nassif.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, Obtainium, there's the Obtainium Canadian. And those were totes.
That's right.
Yep.
But the ones we're putting out now are our barrels.
The ones now are barrels. So most of them are.
Yeah, and you can look at each barrel and they're all numbered, 1 of 200, 2 of 200, shows you how many came out of that particular barrel.
So as far as your vision of what you want Obtainium to be, you're already doing it. You just want to increase the scale, increase the sources, increase the number of countries you go to. Keep
Right.
doing what you're doing. I sounded like Bobby Flay there. Sorry. Keep doing it. Just doing it at a larger scale. Is that right?
Yep, larger scale, more variety, more access. Obviously, for my goal to happen, it's also going to take time. There are a lot of new distilleries out right now, or new distillers coming up, specifically in the United States, but also Canada, some in South America. There's some pretty interesting ones in South America popping up. But for me to like buy all these casks, they're not going to be aged because they're newer distilleries that are very promising. So it's going to take like 5 years, 6 years to end up seeing the whiskey on the market.
Yeah, I see a hazmat sticker.
Yep.
And Michael's bottle there. And one of the goals is to bring these to the public at a low cost too. We don't go out, spend a lot of money on marketing and fancy labels and fancy equipment to do everything, so we can keep our costs low enough so we can bring these to the public at a decent price.
Yeah. I mean, the best example that we just got, this is, we'll talk about this later, but this is a 21-year-old Canadian rye whiskey, 100% rye whiskey. You might have seen it recently from a company called Chicken Cock, and they were charging what, $500 for it. You also might have seen the 16-year version finished in some barrels, and it was called Seagrass 16. So you might be asking yourself, like, Seagrass 16 is a $500 bottle, and Chicken Cock was a $500 bottle. That one was 90 proof. We're going to sell a barrel proof 21-year Canadian rye that's the same stuff that all these others were bottling for less than half the cost.
Call it ocean yard clippings.
Yeah. No, the 21-year rye, specifically the Canadian rye, the thing I like about them is that they don't get over oaked. And everybody says like color is everything. And don't get me wrong, it's lighter. But what I like about it is that over time, it tastes more like a Scotch almost than it does like a traditional American rye. And so you still get, like, you get the classic rye, the bubblegum, the grass, like the vibrancy, but then you get almost like non-tannic oak notes. Which is like super great. It's what you get out of Scotch. So it's an interesting profile.
Are they doing anything different in the process so like historically they invented light whiskey to compete with vodka in the 60s. Whiskey was getting its butt kicked, so they came up with a new category. And then if you look at pure Canadian high wines, those things get up to vodka levels of ABV and have almost no flavor. They're just there for the alcohol. That it seems like we kind of went in the middle now, where we're actually looking for a flavorful product, not just the alcohol, but it's also kind of a thing on its own that is getting used more for blending now.
Yeah, so the American light whiskey story is different. And the only thing that I've come to realize in all of my research and everything was that I think that yes, light whiskey came as a response to vodka boom in the 70s or late 60s. But I also think the misconception there is that it just came out of nowhere, i.e. it was created. I don't think that's the case. I think what ended up happening is in America is that they looked to Canada and looked to Scotland, mostly Scotland, and said to themselves, I mean, Scotch had a decline, but it never crashed in the 60s. When there was the vodka boom in the United States, Scotch still sustained. They did not, Scotch distilleries never went belly up like Americans did in the 60s. So I think they looked to Scotland and in part said to themselves, what are they doing that we're not doing? And of course, the single grain, the success of the blending agent kind of influenced or inspired that decision to create light whiskey as a category. So did Canada. Canadians sustained during that time too. Shall we move to? Let's see, is it 13-year?
15-year
15.
light whiskey. Thought it'd be fun to compare a younger and an older light whiskey.
This will be fun. This is what made us famous, right?
As well it should.
Either that or a younger Canadian rye. Was that what I was looking at? Like a 14-year-old Canadian rye.
We did do a 14-year Canadian rye. That was another tote that we had. That one was wonderful too. Valleyfield Distillery up in Canada. It was 53% rye, 47% corn whiskey. Really enjoyed those.
So Vadim, where are these two Obtainiums from if they're all basically single barrels?
The light whiskey?
Yeah.
The 15 I got from OC Bottle Shop.
Just in case any of us want to, do they still have more bottles?
They do, yeah.
Okay. Might as well do a promo.
Go for it. Well, I found an Obtainium bourbon at one of the local shops.
Yeah, we did do a bourbon.
Yeah, but it's only 52.3. So
only.
Brian's not going to be interested in that one.
I love your bourbon, by the way. I've still got a smidge left of it that I've been holding on to, and it is so good.
Thank you.
All right, Vadim, who has it?
And
I'll
in
chat,
the
yeah.
interim, I'll also tell you guys, your marketing with the hazmat labels on the bottles is working 100%. Before I even knew what you guys were, I saw that and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, oh yeah, we're buying that, because literally, like when I have friends over and they want to try something, they always say, don't burn my face off, like don't kill me. And I go, oh, don't worry, I'm not bringing out the bad one. I'm like, when you see the like flammable thing, I'm like, then you should be worried.
Yeah, it was more of an afterthought. I almost didn't put it on there, but I said, that'd be kind of cool.
That's what sold me on it. Danny was saying, you got to see this. It's 147.4 proof. And we took 3 bottles. So hot
Nice.
stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I have to put an ice cube in it myself.
Mhm.
The tempers are just perfect, just a small piece of ice.
Looks like the shop near me has a store pick of the Canadian whiskey for at 78.8%. So if you need to set a new record in your collection,
But who has the bourbon that you were talking about?
them too. I posted in the chat.
Oh, you mean OC?
I posted in the chat. So yeah, so we're on the 15, right? Who's comparing the 6 to the 15? And what are your thoughts? How do the younger to the older? Are these similar whiskeys, just a different age, or are
Identical whiskeys.
they identical? Okay. Very cool. And so these all go up in proof with time, right?
Depends on where they're warehoused, but generally speaking, yes.
My palate's definitely opening up to it more now that we're 4 in. The sweetness, if I was doing this blind, I would swear it was finished. It's really in a nice way. I happen to like finished whiskey. It's really lovely. It definitely, what you were saying earlier is right. It helps balance the heat because they come almost the exact same time on the palate. So it's simultaneously kind of cooling the palate while I'm being hit with the warmth of the alcohol. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, there was something special about those. I could never. I mean, it's weird. People like 3 years ago were just saying it's aged vodka, and we're like, why the hell are you doing this? And like, drink it. Like that was the thing. And then nowadays, light whiskey blows up, and then the rest is history.
The simplicity of your bottles. There's a very a niche marketing approach to doing very little marketing. I mean, as a guy who does sample bottles and doesn't go all fancy with all, I get it. I think it's very cool.
Going to be candid, we also didn't have the money for a marketing team. So
but there's, I mean, it's just a different approach. Like I said,
Yeah.
I do the same thing. Everybody here knows that they get their samples in a Ziploc bag. I can go out and get and source custom made boxes with felt inside and charge everybody an extra $20 for the kit.
Yep. Yeah, it was a good decision to make, because especially in this market, when prices started to rise for everything, it's good that we're remaining consistent. The reason why we are consistent now in terms of pricing is because of the decisions we made. Either one, because we simply didn't have the money to afford these luxuries when we started, or two, we ran a simple operation so we can continue to apply that as we scale up. So we don't require the marketing team that needs to spend X amount of marketing dollars in every new state. We had YouTube, which costed nothing for us, or minimal. So that has allowed us to scale without these increased costs like most companies have.
If I missed it, what Obtainium? What's the name? What's that from?
John can tell you about that.
Well, we sat down and for about a week came up with different names, and finally I came
Brian,
up
hello.
with Unobtainium. But Unobtainium was already used by what's that movie with the blue people in it? Not the Smurfs.
Avatar.
That's
Avatar. Yeah.
Unobtainium.
It's an old movie term.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Oh,
we just said,
superhero.
okay, well, use Obtainium, and it worked. We originally called it Obtainium Master Collection Series, but the trademark office said we can't use the word master because it has a reference to the golf masters. So we dropped the Master Collection Series, and it's just Obtainium now.
Are there a few brands that have Masters Collectors here? Whatever. What's done is done.
Come on, Eugene. I know you're not a copyright guy, but golf.
It's all about not getting
golf and
sued.
whiskey are not the same category for
All about not getting
trademarks and
sued.
copyrights.
Yeah.
But technically, a cease and desist is not getting sued, right?
What?
A cease and desist does not mean you're actually getting sued.
That's true.
Correct.
We've only gotten one cease and desist yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're saying that the trademark office rejected it, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Wow. It's weird. All that whiskey that the Masters Golf puts out. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think the Masters, do they have a vodka now? Or the PGA's got a vodka now?
No.
I bet you Masters just has it trademarked that if you put Masters at the end of something, they want to have a royalty on
You
that.
can't do that. You have to have it in use within a certain period of time. But
Yep.
that's now we're getting
Yeah.
too deep into legal.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another Zoom.
Wild Turkey has their Masters keep and
Yeah, exactly.
do.
I've got one. Yep.
That doesn't sound, that sounds like,
Well, yeah,
sounds like you picked the short straw from the guy at the trademark office.
6-year versus
Could
15-year. How are we doing on the notes on that?
15 year?
Good.
Yes, please.
Which one do we prefer, the 15 or the 6-year, or are they both good? And I think weirdly,
Well-
you said the 6-year is MSRP what, $50?
No. 6-year is $39.99.
Oh wow, okay, because the 15 was like 70, so
Hmm.
still very reasonable for a 15-year-old at almost 70 proof.
Yeah.
That must hurt though, when you're bottling and it's like 69.7. Oh, so
Yeah.
close to hazmat.
Well, yeah, but also like it's 69, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Like I will say, similar to Jordan, I'm finally warming up to it where I'm not just getting the heat, and I see what everyone's saying on the sweetness on this 15. Like now I'm getting almost like someone mentioned a like Sauternes finish. I'm almost getting like a Sauternes finish kind of note now on the nose.
I get like a marshmallow on the 6, and then on the 15, it becomes like a toasted marshmallow.
But you said that these light whiskeys are 99% corn, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So that's why they're sweet. I mean, right? So
Yep.
Yep. A lot of the reason too is again the light whiskey. So higher proof anything is going to pull more sugars from the barrel. So like a lot of the lower barrel entry proof stuff, the old Dusties, right? All of your whiskeys from like 60s, 70s, 80s. A lot of those had that lower entry proof and they got a lot more tannic more quickly. So that's the other difference too, is the lower proof, you're going to pull more tannins from the barrel versus you're going to get a lot more sugars, the higher the proof.
right.
Plus with a used barrel, a lot of those tannins are already pulled out from
Correct.
whatever was in it prior.
And you said both of these were Jack Daniels barrels?
The 6-year is Jack Daniels, the
6-year.
other one is Seagram's bourbon.
Are we ready to move on to the one everybody's been waiting to try?
Damn, don't die.
Careful,
Dude.
drink some water.
You do a picture video?
Yeah, let's do a picture. That sounds like a good idea. As everyone pours
Sorry,
their
guys, that was me.
27-year-old Canadian whiskey, which is, pretty old and pretty high proof. Let's cheers. Let's everyone raise a glass and say thank you to John and Gene for joining us tonight.
A little bit of chaos.
There you go. Cheers, everyone. Smile.
Cheers.
Got it. Thank you very much. Thank you for the reminder, Jordan. Jordan just likes to have his picture taken.
It's true.
This
Line up.
So to go through the story too, you guys have the 27. Remember, Heaven Hill buys Black Velvet, the company. They do not buy the barrels, they buy the brand name. And then what ends up happening is the barrels start to get sold. I come in through a relationship with the company Black Velvet prior. So the company that was then bought out by Heaven Hill and started buying the barrels. And that's where we're at. So this is ultra aged, as they say, Black Velvet. 26-year was a blend of Canadian light whiskey with Canadian corn whiskeys, which is the same whiskey that our 26-year is now. And then 3%. So 5% is corn whiskey and rye whiskey. And then the rye whiskey component is what it will now be the new 21-year Canadian rye. So what they did was they distilled 3 different whiskeys, they blended them, and then they casked them as a blend and aged for 27 years.
Can you write that down and put that in the chat, Vadim, because that was too confusing.
Here.
So I've got a question, and if you answered this before, I apologize because I was a few minutes late. But when you're blending this and coming up with this, are you proofing it down, or are you just tasting it straight up? And if you're proofing it down, what are you proofing it down to?
The Obtainium products?
Yes.
Yeah, we're not proofing down the Obtainium products. But the blends like the Nassif Family Reserve, Gene can answer how he did that. We actually did he did this for his wedding a couple of years ago. He wanted to come up with the perfect blend for his family to share at his wedding, and everybody enjoyed it so much we decided to go put it out there full time.
Yeah. Yeah, the story also goes, and it's true. So my dad was a whiskey guy, but like didn't like high proof stuff. And like I didn't want to knock my family on their ass with like the Obtainium. So I was like, 107 is like high enough that people are gonna say it's crazy, but it's not too high that it's gonna be bad. I mean, my grandfather, who was like 80, he's still around, but at that point he was like 87. He was drinking this stuff. So it's probably best to keep the 78%, keep that to the folks who can drink it.
But like when you guys are sampling those barrels, like to see if they're ready, are you proofing the light whiskey down when you sample it to see if it's ready, or just trying it straight up?
Straight
up.
How many barrels do you manage to make it through before you call it a day?
It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. We do several. Depends on the day.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could turn a bad day into a good day and vice versa all at the same time, right?
Yep.
I do have a cot back there, so, and I've been known to spend the night down here sometimes. Better safe than sorry.
So is this specifically the one they have at K&L, Vadim?
Pardon me?
I got this one specifically at OC Bottle Shop.
Oh, interesting. So again, they're more than, I mean, again, they're single barrels of these, or these, like, is the shop the one that's the same as the 27 that's at K&L, or?
So the 27 that's around, that was 8 single barrels that we got. And that was a blend of what I posted in the chat, the blend of like the Canadian light whiskey, corn whiskey, and rye whiskey. So they blend it and then they age it. So it's not like we got the 3 barrels and then blended it. No, it was the distillate was blended and then aged. Now, the 26 year that we have now, that's Canadian corn whiskey, that is just that component, that corn whiskey component to the blend. So they're 2 separate whiskeys. And then our 21-year rye whiskey is the rye component that was blended to create the 27.
Has that rye been released yet?
Not yet.
Yeah, we just got that towed in about 3 days ago.
Just make sure you send us all an email when you're ready to rock.
Can do.
We'll take some off your hands.
Yeah, I've been thinking about how I want to release it too, and I've talked to John. I would love my entry into rye that I fell in love with rye with, or fell in love with rye through, was Midwinters. So I do think doing a 21-year port finished rye would be wonderful.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful.
Super high proof.
Yeah. Well, the rye that we've got, so barrel entry proof of this from Canada was 100 proof, and now it's 63.9. So it's 120.
That's good.
Yeah, 128 maybe.
Yes, you should do that and let us know before you sell it out to everyone else.
Absolutely. Will do.
You're being recorded. So, Eugene, I'm interested in hearing like how you went from being a family law attorney. Well, you said divorce. I don't know if you specialize only in divorce. I hope.
Oh no, I do family law generally.
All right. So hopefully you do some other fun parts of it too, if there's anything fun to family law. But how you got into this from that?
Opposite.
Are you into family law because you were getting divorced over your whiskey? Is that what it was?
So my last year of law school was when Obtainium started. Yeah, we created the brand the year that I graduated from law school, and I was like new attorney. I didn't even start doing family law. I started doing personal injury work. Now I primarily do divorce work, but I still do business litigation and then some personal injury stuff, but primarily family law. And that mostly came from the pandemic. Pandemic saw a huge spike in the family law cases. And I mean, really, if the demand's there, then you need, or yeah, if the supply of work is there, you need to meet it and adapt.
And how'd you get into this even during law school or whatever? Like what led you into doing this?
It was a whiskey group. I was in a whiskey group like this, or like many other whiskey groups. I saw a market. This was like 2019, even 2018. You have to remember that there were not as many MGP bottlers that said that they were MGP bottlers as there are now. There were also not as many people that were experimenting with different blends and concepts as there are now. So the whole idea of like, let's take the concept of American, or the concept of Scotch independent bottling, apply it to America, was somewhat new.
Where are you based?
Go ahead.
Where are you based?
Iowa, Bettendorf.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't say off the top of my head. There's Lost Lantern, they're called. And they do it very small scale. They're nowhere near where we're at, but maybe 4 independent bottlers here in the States. Not very many.
There's a couple, but it's also, if you really think about it, because we've done a few barrel picks the last few years. Every club that does barrel picks is now an independent bottler. Every store is an independent bottler. They're doing barrel picks. So like it's just it's a horse of a different name. You know what I mean? It's interesting. What you're doing is essentially independent bottling. Like that's really independent bottling, at least the way I see it. Yep. But like
I get the concept, and the thing too is there is something to be said about being the person in the States that can actually do the true independent bottling. And what I mean by that is, for a shop to find a Scotch barrel, for a shop to find, oh my God, rum barrels now, for a shop to find Armagnac, I mean, it gets difficult. And so the whole concept of like bringing it all into one location is also somewhat new. That being said, like Cadenhead, like I said, the people that I looked up to were Cadenhead, Alexander Murray, Gordon McPhill, like all of those people were killing it. And I wanted to do something similar, but expand into the American stuff. I don't know if you guys have gotten really into the Scotch independent bottlers. I mean, some of them back in the day were doing American whiskeys too, back before there was a whiskey boom, and they did some wonderful stuff. Like really, really, really good. The other thing too, like here, Murray McDavid, you guys have heard of these guys? They're a blending house, and like these guys just buy barrels that they like, that taste good. They finish some of them, they blend them. This one's a blend of 5 different distilleries. This is malt and grain, and then they finished it in a sherry butt. Like, that's super cool. And they just have this bottling house, and that's what they do. The whole concept is so cool. And I think that can be done with American spirits and some international spirits as well. Armagnacs are going to be big too. Mark my words.
Absolutely. I'm going to launch the poll real quick, so everyone wake up and let us know your favorite.
Oof.
But yeah, that's the thing with, there's a lot of independent bottlers out there. What makes the unique ones interesting is bringing something else that isn't done a million times. And it's kind of goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, is everybody and their mom is doing an MGP bourbon at 5 years old. Like, give me something different.
Correct. And there are some companies that have done a good job. I think let's see, Smooth Ambler, I would say they've done a good job, right? By good job, I mean they did MGP and then they explored Dickel, and people didn't like Dickel, even though I love Dickel, and then they stopped, right? Like, they stopped at 2. Barrel, I'll give them a ton of credit. They've probably done 6, 7, 8. The only issue with Barrel really is that, one, they don't disclose the sourcing exactly, right? They'll say Indiana, Kentucky, etc. They also don't do, and they're starting to now, like when they do the single barrels of the single barrel rye specifically, but they didn't really do the single cask offerings. So they were blending it all, and the kicker is the Polish rye, the Tennessee rye. John, what else did we do? What was Dovetail? The Dovetail too. Dovetail was light whiskey that they were finishing. So we were doing single barrels of all of these barrels that they ended up, Barrel Bourbon Company ended up blending, which was pretty funny to like look back and see, like, at the same time that we were bottling the single barrels of like the rye that ended up becoming the barrel rye, but they blended it with MGP. So like the Polish rye that we did was blended with Canadian and Indiana rye and created barrel rye. And then barrel seagrass, the main component was the Canadian rye, and we bottled just the Canadian rye and we didn't finish it. Barrel seagrass 16-year was our Canadian, it will be our 21-year Canadian, just unfinished. So it's cool to see that we've done similar products, but we bring it in a more pure form. Or we don't blend it, right? Like, we're not playing around with that.
All right, if everyone has voted, I'm gonna close the poll. So you've gotten a feel for this group. What do you think was the favorite of the night?
That's a good question. The shocker of the night was probably the rum for everybody, because they expected nothing of the rum. Guarantee that. That being said, the favorite, I would guess the 16, or what is it, 15-year light.
John, do you agree?
I would think the rum would be, just by the expressions on everybody's comments. And that's usually the way it goes. People, they think rum, they think, just another rum until they try it. And that's been our whole marketing issue with this particular rum. People think it's just an ordinary rum until they try it. The hard part is getting them to try it once, and then they love it.
Well, the results are in, and you're both spot on. It's tied first place, rum and the 15-year light whiskey.
Well,
Nice.
That's what makes us good marketers, right?
Yeah, you read the room very well. Yeah, the rum was definitely a surprise twist for everyone, and I mean, I'm shocked that the Canadian whiskey didn't do nearly as well as I would have expected. I guess it's not all in the proof.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And the what's the way to put it? I think the other thing that sets us apart is, again, that like storytelling aspect. Like, you have tried rums, you have tried Captain Morgan, you have tried Seagram 7. Like, let's be honest here. That is not light whiskey, and that is not the rum that you're drinking. So in other words, like the education component and opening your mind to what spirits can be presented in a different way is a key component of this entire experience. The
Sure.
best part, when people bring up, oh, light whiskey is only aged vodka, or it's only, it's just this junk that's overaged. My response is always, isn't there a difference between cabin still that you can find on the shelf for $11 and Pappy Van Winkle? Or isn't there a difference between, these cheap bottom shelf, like the Beam 8-star and the Knob Creek 15-year-old? I mean, at the end of the day, there's fewer barrels of the Knob Creek 15, but the barrels, when they enter the barrel, are all the same as the stuff that goes into the cheapest of the cheap, right? It's all about curating those casks and keeping up with them until they come of age that matters.
Yeah, we did a tasting with Buffalo Trace, and we talked about how ancient age is the same mash bill as Blanton's, I think. Yeah,
I got the poor man's Blantons here.
there you go.
Yeah.
Same mash bill.
What?
Same mash bill.
Yeah, I joke with my dad. I had my dad try them side to side, and he couldn't tell the difference. And my dad was lucky enough a couple years ago to get a bottle of Blanton's himself. I've got 6 of them, not because I like this stuff, but because it was habit at that point to buy it when you see it. But the point is, my dad now fills up his Blanton's bottle with ancient age 90 proof, and all of his friends are none the wiser. Like, none the wiser. Great story.
That's funny. We'll figure out where to get the rum out here. I'll be in touch with you, and we'll figure out who's got it, because it seems like nobody can find it.
Yeah, anywhere that's got Obtainium generally can order it from the distributor for immediate delivery, or within 2-3 weeks delivery.
Okay, we have a few local shops that help us out, so I'm sure we can make that happen.
Cool.
Awesome. Any other questions for John and Gene? I think the whiskey got us. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for spending the evening with us. These were delicious, and it was great to hear your story. I think your story is, the whiskey was good, but the story was the better part. Essentially, you it's like, we're all in a whiskey club. We could do this too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And eventually you'll build up, any whiskey club, you start buying barrels, and the rest is history. The difference is, in America, you guys have to own the barrels. You have to either have a distillery own them on your behalf or do whatever. But overseas, you can just buy them. So my recommendation, if you do want to do that, is actually to go overseas first. You can go to Scotland and just buy it. Like, that's it.
Yeah, we've had to jump through some hoops, and I'm sure any barrel picks we've done, we've had to go through a retailer, not necessarily a distillery, but either way, somebody with a license, because we couldn't buy it flat out. So,
yeah, you might be able to get around it with Scotch, though. I will tell you that, especially if you import it direct, i.e., go from the UK to California. You can eliminate a lot of that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. I will be there later next month, so
Cool.
might buy a barrel or two.
Bring me back a barrel, Vadim.
Yeah, I got you. How big of a suitcase do I pack for that? Awesome. Thank you so much, Gene, John. We appreciate your time. I know you guys are a couple hours ahead of us, so thank you so much. This has been an absolute blast. And we hope to see you again in the future. If you want to talk about some new releases in a few months, we can definitely revisit.
Absolutely. Have a nice night.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Cheers.